Hello, YouTube and possibly BitChute friends. It's a little bright today. I'm wearing my pinhole sunglasses. It's a little bright today. Anyway, I want to comment briefly on the recent election in Ontario, Canada. We've had, my last videos have been largely about the shit show. Friends of mine, sort of people I know, really resent and are offended by the fact I call it a shit show, what has been happening for over 2.5 years, which in essence, even if you believe there to be some kind of threatening health issue, like a virus that is a flesh-eating disease that shows no actual results. Nobody is dead in the streets. It's a pandemic, but we're not seeing the actual deaths in front of us. I ask people, who do you know that have died? Very few people know anyone that died. I talk to people about the fact that if you look at overall deaths from 2018 to 2019 or 2020, the deaths in the population as a whole, in countries as a whole, on the planet, on Earth, is no more than was in 2018. So 2019, 2020 deaths, no more than before. The flu has been eradicated. It has been replaced by something called a beer virus. And people are offended when I say shit show. There is no evidence of this actual thing occurring. And I am happy to concede that something has occurred other than the directives. What has occurred are directives, restrictions, extreme overstepping of authority over the last 2.5 years, which is why I refer to it as a shit show. And people who insist that I'm being offensive with this commentary need to show me that there is clear evidence that this is a massive, on such a massive scale, required a response on such a massive scale, that I am offended by what has been occurring to restrict personal freedoms without the evidence. And I'd like to see the evidence. I'd like to see the science, because it doesn't exist. And this is quite well documented. There's a lot of video evidence and people researching, and high qualified people and doctors and the whole lot. So all those people that feel offended by me criticizing, I'm not going to be cordial about this, because the offense is with me and people like me who understand this is an extreme overreach. That's just a preliminary, a small commentary, because I've had confrontations by some people who resent the fact that I am so critical of what authorities have decided to do with what are freedoms which cannot be taken away. There was a veteran that said, we as veterans protect freedom. We don't give freedom. So authorities that think of themselves as giving us freedom are deranged. They're demented. They're obscene in their overstepping. That's what I've been saying. So here is a comment on the election in Ontario, Canada. A party, an extreme left-wing progressive party called the Conservatives, the Conservatives, and a guy called Doug Ford, have been reelected after 2.5 years of directing a shit show, this shit show in Ontario. People have reelected him, and out of 125 or 129 seats in the legislature, they have gotten something like 80, 84 seats, which is 2/3 of all the votes, of all the seats allocated in the legislature were on this extreme left progressive conservative party. And the numbers, eligible voters turned out in record no-shows. There were the least number of eligible voters showed up, probably in the history of Ontario elections, the least number of voters showed up. And out of all the eligible voters, the guy who won, this Ford character, got 18% of the eligible vote. So he forms a majority government on 18%. So something is terribly dysfunctional here. This is, in my mind, this is not a majority election. This is something that is part of the shit show. I see this tightly knit into this 2.5 year overreach that has been happening by this particular party and leader, Doug Ford. I cannot, I cannot conjure enough negatives around this person. I'm not going to get into it because then it would get vulgar. But this type of an individual who has, however this is done, another friend of mine said, well, they're all electronic machines. So the electronic machines could very well be manipulated. But I have a feeling that he actually was elected on this minimal amount of voting that happened. And here's my thought on this election. Even if more people had turned out and he was elected, the point that I'd like to make is to all those mindful, thoughtful people, and there aren't that many. There aren't that many. I was hoping there would be more. And when I say there aren't that many, there are alternative parties. One is called the Ontario Party here in Ontario, and another one was called the New Blue Party. The party I voted for because they came out categorically against any mandates or mandatory injections, experimental injections into our bodies. They came out categorically, they would stop all of that stuff. And they received something like 127,000 votes. And the number of votes cast for people that were not of the consensual parties like the Progressive Conservative, Liberal, NDP, even the Green Hacks, there were about 260,000 votes cast for other. They're called other parties, which is a rather derogatory name for the other parties, the new parties, the New Blue Party and the Ontario Party. I don't know if the Communist Party. And the New Blues actually got 2/3 of that other vote, which is quite substantial considering they just started a couple of years ago. So they received what I would consider, out of eligible voters, very few people voted, but they received only about 130,000, 127,000 votes. And in my mind, considering the outrage that I witnessed against the mandates in relation to the Freedom Convoy, the truckers, this is a very low number in my mind. I thought it would have been much higher. So I'm not quite sure how this plays out in terms of the reality when, we stood at overpasses cheering on the trucker convoys. Now, mind you, it was a Canada-wide thing, not just Ontario. And Canada-wide, I'm sure there are millions. But in Ontario, which has one of the, I think, the largest population in Canada as a province, there must be 10, 12 million people. Only 127,000 voted against the restrictive procedures, mandates, protocols, all that kind of stuff, which is rather disheartening from my point of view. I can't spin a positive light. The New Blue guy, this Kalaholius, said, he was encouraged. I understand, it's a new party. He got 127,000 votes. That's quite something. But in the bigger picture, that is relatively few people who object to this tyrant running the show for 2.5 years. It was government by decree, basically. It's not a democracy. It's government by decree, and people say, bring it on, bring it on. It's like Stockholm syndrome. People say, bring it on. We want to be abused in this form. We don't need any proof of anything. You just go ahead and decree whatever you want, and we'll go along with it. Like the 1984, everybody's for the party. And my commentary today is to all those people like myself who are rather disgusted and discouraged by the result. What I've said before and what I've realized, what I want to reiterate in the strongest terms, is that no matter what you put in front of a person, whether it's, like I say, mindful people out there making videos, talking about the evidence, talking about the science, showing clearly evidence that there is nothing to warrant this incredible overreach, people out there who are aware of this, thoughtful people, what I have to say to them is you cannot make a person feel anything they don't want to feel. So no matter how many facts you put in front of someone, how many reasonable arguments you place in front of someone, how much detail you're able to go into with convincing people in terms of your sincerity and honesty, which is very high in my mind. Honesty is much more important than truth in the scheme of things. I am much more inclined toward a person who's honest rather than somebody who spouts truth. Because truth, as I say, is a moving target. So the people that are, in essence, discouraged and even offended by this type of a result is fundamentally not realizing that you can't make a person feel anything they don't want to feel. So no matter how oppressed someone might be, and there are names for those people who embrace their abductors and abusers, whether it's domestic or whether it's in the aggregate, in the larger sense, people have embraced their abuser. And this is unfortunately a characteristic that I think Orwell was pointing out as well, how an entire population will believe any story that they're told if they feel inclined toward the abuser. And this is what's happened. And you cannot make a person feel something they don't want to feel. If they're committed to reenacting the abuse over and over again, this is just what people do. And there's nothing we can do. There is absolutely nothing, I'm convinced, we can do. I'm saying in terms of producing facts, evidence, science, whatever that is called, it won't make any difference. This is what I'm saying, because you can't make a person feel something they don't want to feel. So it kind of reduces our interactions, our relationships to, I suppose, like-minded people. Then I suggest that we relate to people not based on anything we would like them to feel, but what we mutually already feel. So if I am in a group of people who are not so inclined as I am, I will not breach the subject. Or rather, I will not broach, not breach. I will breach the subject. I will not broach the subject of the shit show, because clearly people are committed to their own sensibilities, their own feelings, their own emotions. And whether they make sense or not, an emotion is exactly that. Emotions don't make sense. People are committed to the way they feel. We can coerce, which is what is going on with over the last 2.5 years. The shit show is a coercion that certain people are really responsive and react very well to coercion, meaning they go along with it. They are easily coerced into going along with something. So as I think I've expressed what I wanted to say today, and I haven't done a video for a while, so I hope this makes sense, because it's the way I sort of console myself in terms of not being able to have a conversation with someone that even I like, I regard, consider as a friend, when they shut down and withdraw like turtles into a shell when you have an opinion. It's like it's kind of, when you think about it, forget about the beer virus or anything else that someone might be committed to believing. That what I find quite offensive in a person most people would consider themselves to be rational human beings. They're not going to say, no, I'm a flake, I'm crazy, I'm batshit crazy, I don't care, I'm stoned, I'm drunk, I whatever. A person that is reasonable, that they would feel so offended in their nature for me to have a particular idea. If I have an opinion about something, why is it so wrong, if you're a rational, normal person, to be so threatened by something that someone else may think that is not the same as you? Now, this is now escalating, I think, because, well, this, I think, is part of the plan to create this dichotomy in the population and to highlight um, this sensibility of intolerance toward someone else who doesn't think the way you do. And we pride ourselves in our society as a society that is um, that is accepting of minorities, and if you're a minority of a person that has their head on backwards, you have to have tolerance for that person. But someone who has an opinion that is not like yours, you shun them and you throw them over the ledge. You get rid of them. It's like you can have the most extreme kind of idiosyncratic nature to you, and you must be tolerated on all levels now in this woke society. But if you have an opinion outside of the mainstream, you are ostracized and you are excommunicated from the human family. This is essentially what's happened, that an idea, an opinion is so threatening to people now that this is being this has escalated to a level of Orwellian. It's an Orwellian nature, and those among us, like I say, you can't make a person feel anything. Me saying this to someone who is not, at least, if not in line, at least open to hearing someone else without shutting down, this is complete rubbish. It's like speaking Swahili to someone. They have no idea what the hell you're talking about. So my message to all those individuals, people, mindful people that I really enjoy listening to and interacting with, we're a very small group of people. We are a minority who has been oppressed. Like Black Lives Matter has nothing on us. We are so oppressed in this society for having an opinion that others don't share. So I'll probably call it something around that. The greatest oppressed minority now are people with differing opinions.